thank you very much for the introduction. You know, I'm a geophysicist, so it has been very interesting to hear about all these volcanoes and earthquakes in Chile. It's always exciting to see. But first of all, thank you very much for the invitation here today. I'm really pleased to be here to discuss our experience with water governance, and I look forward to a fruitful discussion. Let me see if I can manage this system here. Yes. In this presentation, I will go through some of the lessons learned in Danish water resource management, and I will look into the Danish, or maybe we could call it the Nordic governance structure, organization and planning, and present a few of our results. And finally, I'll present a couple of cases from cities that have excelled in water supply, climate change adaptation, energy production, and of course, wastewater management. Members of DANVA cover all aspects related to urban water management, from groundwater protection through afforestation to drinking water supply, wastewater treatment and discharge. Stormwater management and related urban climate change adaptation is also a responsibility for our members. Drinking water supply is based entirely on groundwater in Denmark. Our wastewater is treated with advanced treatment methods, even to a higher degree than government or our legislation demands. In average, only approximately 30% of the outlet permits on nitrogen and phosphor are used. In recent years, we have seen an increase in energy production from wastewater treatment plants, which is linked to municipal goals to contribute to mitigating climate change. Most of this I'll come back to a little bit later. Several of our members are so-called multi-utilities that also covers district heating and cooling, or supply of gas for households, solid waste collection and management, or even production of electricity is covered by some of our members. Denmark is much smaller than Chile, and of course in Spain. It's a small country, densely populated and highly urbanized. More than 75% of our population live in cities, and we have a large agricultural production as well, not least livestock, and especially the production of pigs. This is not as such a responsibility of our members, but it's a challenge for water and environment, especially in inner Danish waters, fjords, lakes and streams, highly vulnerable recipients to point sources and area sources of pollution. Modern water management took off, as in most of the European countries, when the large cholera epidemics hit Denmark hard in the mid-19th century. Waterworks were constructed, the first in the city of Odense in 1853. Open canals were replaced by underground sewers, and treatment plants were constructed. Gradually, we developed into the present stage with very advanced water distribution and wastewater management systems. In terms of policy and management, a significant step forward was taken in 1971 and 1973, when the first Ministry of Environment was created and the first environmental protection law was passed. But it was also at that time that we experienced some of the consequences of the huge urbanization and industrialization that had taken place, and this includes the industrialization of agriculture, and it was tough for water and the Danish environment. There were many incidents of pollution of surface and marine waters, and growing eutrophication caused by large-scale farming and heavy use of nutrients at that time. In the summer of 1986, pictures of dead lobsters at national television caused public uproar. And the first series of water action plans was adopted as early as in 1987. The plans regulated farmers' use of nutrients and set national standards for removal of this at wastewater treatment plants, and since then we have seen a gradual improvement. The Danish water action plans were a source of inspiration, I think, for the EU Water Framework Directive, especially by presenting tools and setting standards for improving the water environment. Legislation and governance structure are, as we all know, key to a healthy environment, but it needs to be followed by a solid governance system. This is vital to ensure environmental protection alongside with sustainable supply and wastewater management. Ministry for Environment and Food is responsible for water and environment in Denmark. The ministry is responsible for the policy part and the implementation of, for instance, the Water Framework Directive, the Drinking Water Directive, the Urban Wastewater Directive, as well as the adaptation to climate change. Then we have another ministry, Ministry for Energy, Utilities and Climate, who is responsible for the economical part of the legislation and the governance of the water sector. An independent economic regulator is securing that the sector is efficient by setting efficiency demand company by company through a price cap every 4 years. We have this year got a new Water Act where efficiency demand from the 1st of January 2017 will be set on TOTEX, that means the total expenses for the company, which mean both the operational part, the cost for operation and maintenance, and our investments, the CAPEX. Annually, during the last 8 years now, the cost has been reduced by a bit above 2% in average. Now I'll focus on how we are managing water at local level in Denmark. Since 2009, separation of authority, that means the municipalities, and operation, that's the water companies, has been a key guiding principle. 98 municipalities are the local water and environment authorities. They deal with permits and are responsible for local water plans and compliance with legislation. The Danish municipalities set in additional local standards and service levels and are responsible for compliance with national environmental standards and national service levels as well. All water and wastewater companies in Denmark are public owned. The larger ones, approximately 120 companies, dealing with drinking water, sewage, treatment of wastewater, and adaptation to climate change, are owned by the municipalities, either one municipality alone or a group of municipalities. These companies, who are the core members of my association, DANVA, are responsible for water and wastewater for more than 5 million Danes, or approximately 90% of the Danish population. We have, in addition to this, approximately 2,300 small companies dealing only with drinking water. They are serving people in the countryside and villages and are owned and operated as cooperatives. This has been a tradition in Denmark for many years. I think the number has lowered from around 4,000 10 years ago or something. All companies are organized and regulated as private companies in compliance with Danish legislation, and this means that the municipality often has a double role, one as authority and one as owner, and it's very important to keep these roles separated. All municipal-owned wastewater companies are organized, as I said, as private entities. In accordance with the Danish legislation, they are all organized as limited companies, as a matter of fact. The Danish or Nordic model for governance includes 3 levels: the owner, the board, and the management of daily operation. The owner, in our case the municipalities, appoints the members of the board. Members of the board are elected among members of the local council or other stakeholders appointed by the owner. The owner is not allowed to interfere with the tasks of the board. If the owner is not satisfied with a member of board, the owner can, of course, appoint a new board member, but that won't look fine in the long run if they change every week. The board includes, in addition, members representing the staff and consumers who are elected. Often, but not always, the owner has the majority at the board. We have at national level a policy that states that politicians and civil servants from the central administration cannot have a seat in the board of companies owned by the Danish state. We foresee a similar code of conduct for companies owned by municipalities to ensure the relevant and necessary competences to be present at board level to avoid stupid decisions which can ruin the company. The board is responsible for all activities in the company, strategy, investment, financial results, etc., and this means personal responsible. When you're working at a board, you have to work for the best interest of the company and not for other interests. It's not okay, for instance, only to work for the interests of the owner or the consumers if you represent them. You have to take care of the interest of the company. The board appoints the management, but it's not interfering with the daily operations either. The management, the chief executive officer or the chief finance officer are responsible for the daily operation of the company, and the CEO is referring to the board, often directly to the chair, of course. The management is not part of the board, and the CEO cannot vote, which is the case in many countries. The CEO, of course, facilitates the board meetings and supports the chairman. Financially, the water companies comply with the break-even principle. This means they are not for profit, but of course not for loss either. And surplus from running the water companies must be reinvested for future use. In order to pursue realism in policy making and not to make promises toward the public that we can't keep, it is deeply anchored in Danish governance tradition that all policy areas must be funded. The first question to ask when new initiatives are discussed is, who will pay for it and how? And when it comes to water management, full cost recovery is applied as the basic principle. If the water companies, by legislation or by national or a municipal raise in service level, is imposed to invest in new areas, the companies will get a supplement to its price cap, which regulates the total revenue. This makes the companies capable to make the necessary investment and to finance them by raising the tariff. This means that the consumers pay all the utilities costs related to the water supply, sanitation, and stormwater management. The funds are collected with the water tariff, and as you can see from this figure, the major costs are related to wastewater treatment or are of different kind of taxes. And the funds collected allow the utilities in general to cover expenditures and invest in infrastructure. The water companies themselves follow, as I said, a break-even principle. In average, however, 50% of the operation and maintenance and 85% of the construction projects are in public tender, and the contracts are done by private companies. And of course, the private companies have a surplus on these projects if they are clever enough to negotiate the contract. So we have a very long experience with, you could say, public-private cooperation or partnership, and this partnership is very keen or very beloved in Denmark, and we also do that together with foreigners. For instance, we have made an agreement with the Spanish Association, AYAS, because where we can share best knowledge, it can be a win situation for both the Spanish Association and the Danish Association. So that is a very common way to work in Denmark and also in the Nordic countries. Let's see on the water price. In Denmark, we pay €8.5 per cubic meter. This is more expensive than in most European countries, but when we compare at household level with our very low consumption and small households, several countries in Europe are more expensive than Denmark. But for this price, water companies deliver water to your tap 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's entirely based on groundwater, receives only minimal treatment, and no chlorination, and the taste is really unique. It's clean, healthy, and it's tested more frequently than bottled water. And the tariff includes also the treatment of wastewater and the secure outlet back to the environment, as well as projects to adapt to climate change. And what have we achieved in Denmark based on this governance structure? I hope you will allow me to be a bit proud of some of our successes. We have a very low water consumption per capita in Denmark. We consume only 106 liters of water per day per person in the households. This is all groundwater, receiving only minimal treatment such as aeration and sand filtration. Water consumption in Denmark has decreased 15% over the last decade, and this has been followed by increased economic production. So this is really a sign of improved efficiency. We have also very low leakage rates. In average, 7% of the water in the distribution network is being lost. Many countries, for instance, our neighbor Norway, has a leakage rate close to 50%. Imagine you produced wine and you had a loss of 50%. That means every second truck you send away with wine, it just disappears somewhere out there. You don't know where. So, but that's not the culture in Denmark. We will know where the water goes. 90% of Danish households are connected to advanced modern wastewater treatment plants, and almost all the rest have local treatment, which means that they literally all wastewater in Denmark is treated. In recent years, climate change has been in focus, and all municipalities are forced by law to develop local climate change adaptation plans. I will now proceed with 2 examples of planning and management in Danish cities and some of the results achieved by that. I have added 2 extra cases in my presentation, one on drinking water and one on energy production. I will not talk about these, but you're welcome to contact me in the break or by email after if you want to discuss it. The first example I'll show is from our capital, Copenhagen. The capital of Denmark is developing very advanced solutions for stormwater management and climate change adaptation. Solutions that people travel from near and far to learn from. The development was initiated by severe flooding events in 2010, 2011. The event in 2011 flooded major areas of central Copenhagen, and costs for insurance companies have been estimated at close to €1 billion. The population demanded a reaction from the city council and the operator, the utility. This came in the form of a very ambitious cloudburst management plan. And Copenhagen has set an ambitious target to become carbon neutral in 2025. But of course, this does not prevent the changes that we are witnessing even today. And the city prepared a plan to adapt to climate change, which was followed by the cloudburst management plan. Once it became clear for everyone how serious flooding we have to prepare ourselves for. The plan was developed by the municipality of Copenhagen in close cooperation with Hofer, the utility of Greater Copenhagen. The overall objective are to protect against a 100-year rain event, establish ownership, who invests and who owns new infrastructure, to make a clear distribution of roles and responsibilities. Based on the plan, it has been possible to decide on 300 new projects to be developed on public areas and to support thousands of initiatives as well on private land. Parallel to this, the government has been able to put in place the necessary legislation to finance these youth investments. The city of Copenhagen expects construction of many new projects to take place for the next 20 years. On this slide, you can see just one of the projects, a new urban park, being developed in a way so that it can contain excess rainwater in case of heavy rain. Our next and final case from Aarhus is a demonstration on what can be achieved through careful and integrated planning of storm and wastewater management. The wastewater plan covers domestic and industrial wastewater as well as rainwater runoff and measures related to climate change adaptation that are funded by the water tariff. All this work is funded by the water tariff, I have to add. The plan is also the framework for delimitation of catchments and establishment of what will be covered by the utility and by the individual consumers. It contains, in addition, the framework for timing and funding of necessary projects in this period. The overall objective is to manage wastewater in a safe manner and in doing so to contribute to a healthy environment in and around Aarhus. This also includes improving bathing water quality in the harbor and in the streams. One of the ongoing activities is to secure the capacity to treat wastewater, and among this, to centralize wastewater treatment into 2 central plants. The plan also aims towards more local management and use of rainwater. There are also many activities related to climate change adaptation in the plan. Aarhus Water, which is the utility, has been developed a system where sewers and retention basins are managed jointly to make sure all capacity can be used. In this way, it may be possible to avoid building more infrastructure than necessary. Information is collected from rainwater radars and sent to central computers that monitors where it's raining and distributes water in an optimal manner in the system. In this way, it's possible to avoid stormwater overflows and flooding, and in doing so, to improve water quality in nearby surface waters and in the city itself. If you wish to learn more about this, I can highly recommend you watching this little movie in English. You can just use the link from the slide. It explains the technology behind the system, and it's in a very simple manner. Improved management based on the joint wastewater plan was a precondition for opening the stream of Aarhus, which used to be running through the city in underground channels. I think you can see for yourself how much this has contributed to improve urban livability in Aarhus. Finally, I will just thank you for your attention, and if there's time, I'm happy to answer a question or two.